So if we look at the one, they're hardwired to pay attention to detail, and they're going to do it. They're going to resent sloppy work. It's just no matter how much work they do on themselves, it's still going to be what they pay attention to. And they're handling it by thinking, to be worthy and right and do what should be done and be respectable, then they need to be responsible. They need to be thorough. They need to be diligent, all the things we've learned about type 1. But each type seeks opportunities. And in the case of the 1, they're seeking opportunities by noticing what's not being done properly and wanting to improve more than be glorified. So if someone has 1, improvement is more significant. If someone has 3 without 1, then doing things at the highest level that will be valued would be the 3, and that's a common mistyping. But each type can become compulsive, obviously. That's what we're here for. And we have to say, well, what is it each type worries about? And in the case of the 1, they must be ethical and they must be valued for being ethical. And then that takes away the painful feeling of being fundamentally wrong, that they must do what's called for, they must do what's right. A lot of times 2s will mistype as 1s because well, I'm good. I want to be good, but their definition of good is emotional good. And the 1s really more focused on not being bad, wrong, evil, corruptible, unethical. Whereas the 2 is, I am a kind person. I do help people. I can make a difference. So it's a different triad, it's a different center, but both worry about being good, but they're right next door to each other too. It's a continuum. It's really important to understand that it's a continuum, and tritype unfolding shows how that plays out. So really, it doesn't help the 1 to say, stop being so exacting, stop being so critical. You say that to any type and it doesn't work, as I'm sure you know. But instead, if we're feeling the trauma, if we scold ourselves, it's still a problem. We don't heal from scolding, any of us. We just go deeper into our fixation. So whether it's someone scolding us or we're scolding ourselves, it's worse when we're scolding ourselves. But it's much more productive to affirm what we do that makes a difference. And in the case of the 1, if we can just show appreciation for how ethical and hardworking they are, and how they strive for improvement, and how it makes a difference in people's lives, and that if they can just honor that part of themselves and then suggest that sometimes it's better to deliver a completed project or job rather than a perfect job. Now, the reason that's hard is 1s are hardwired to seek that good feeling that comes from having done something at almost really it's a spiritual level. If they check and recheck, it's not that they're worried like a 6 checking and rechecking. They just get that sense of brilliance for having done something thoroughly, responsibly. And then it's easier to suggest moving beyond the non-essential, and they're open to it. But if we don't do that first, honor what the 1 is doing, because they're going to do it compulsively with trauma. We can just go right back to the type. So in the case of the 2, they're preoccupied with others and the concerns of others, and they see an opportunity to go and make a difference, and then they get their good feeling from having helped someone. So unconsciously, they feel they've earned the right for people to do the same for them. And then they're heartbroken when people don't notice what they notice. That's why learning that they need to do something for others, to be worthy of getting something from others. So a lot of times people think, oh no, the 2s just give to get. Well, we all do that. I mean, that's how we survive. We all have to manipulate according to our type, but the two feels they have to earn it. But if they have earned it, they can be very hurt and upset and even feel trauma that they're not appreciated because they feel like disconnected. If they have no value, they have no worth. If they have no worth, then they won't be cared for. No one will tend to them. And so these are all very real reactions. Whereas you can't tell them to stop being so generous and supportive. You honor that they're generous and supportive, but introduce being generous and supportive to themselves and their needs, and not making their needs bad or needy, but just say it's reasonable to have those needs. Where the two gets hurt is expecting people to fill it, because people don't track what a two tracks, so they're not going to. But we all think that the other types just haven't learned what we learned based on our type. I used to just think, no, you just need to get a little tougher. Yeah, let's just work on that. Oh, you're afraid? Okay, let's practice reacting fast. But remember, slowing down, being sympathetic rather than just empathetic. Head types are understanding. Heart types are sympathetic. They know what to say or do. And gut types are empathetic. We just feel what other people feel, but then we don't like it because if they're feeling pain, we can only take so much of it. So we either have to put a barrier up or change the subject or in some way move away from it. But in the case of the two, they've learned that if they are sympathetic, they're like the most sympathetic type. Now, two is described as an empathetic type, but that's because people don't understand the difference between empathy and sympathy, and that's a whole thing. Empathy is you actually can feel what another person's feeling, not imagine it, but literally put yourself in someone else's shoes. And then sympathy instead is like, wow, that person's hurting. Those are the gestures of sadness or grief. And you say, hey, are you okay? That's sympathy. You're tending to the person. You're not going, oh my God, that person's not okay. I got to avoid them. Like if you're a 7, you're no, I don't want to go into that territory because I don't need to go into something I don't know how to get out of myself. But they have a very kind part of them that's understanding, the 7. So instead of empathy or sympathy, the 7 is going to give encouragement. They're going to try and make the person a little more cheerful, upbeat. And they're also known for incredible singular acts of kindness, whereas the 2 is pretty consistently showing acts of kindness. And the 7 will just do it unexpectedly and don't ever expect it again. But if they think, oh gosh, you're really down, well, listen, my friend has this condo in Hawaii. You should go there for a week. I'll pay for it. They'll do something really extraordinary, but in singular experiences. So I discovered they have this angel of mercy quality to them. So what I'm trying to clarify is it's based on understanding rather than empathy or sympathy, because they don't want to go into it empathetically. And they can learn sympathy, we all can, but naturally they're going to go, yeah, I'd be miserable. I'd need to go distract myself to deal with something painful. So with the 3, they're hardwired to pay attention to what they can do to be successful. Yeah, I'm good at soccer. Yeah, I'm going to get better at soccer. And then focus on becoming proficient and be real taskmasters. I mean, the thing about 3, when you guys decide to do something, you work really hard. And I know that I'm thinking, well, I do it because I want to, but I don't work that hard. Okay, I need to kick back and have some more Gatorade and, some chips or energy bar. Okay, then I'll go and work out again. But this drive, this ambition, this part of 3 that recognizes the excellence. I teach a little, I think I even have it on YouTube, on the Enneagram of process. And the 3 is the point of production. So whatever the three comes across, they figure out how to do it and how to multiply that. And that's what only threes intuitively do. It's amazing. Little threes don't need to learn how to have a goal. They see people, oh, I want to be like Janice. And then they study Janice and they made a role model themselves. And then they do everything Janice does and they take it in. And then that becomes a part of their persona. Whereas, like as an eight, I'd never think about that goal. What's a goal? For me, it's more, wait, there's an obstacle. And the eight is focused on obstacles and we want to overcome them. We want to beat that obstacle. You know, we can be in a fight with a computer and say, what do you mean? Why are you not working? And be mad at the computer or the chair or whatever. But what we're going to do is keep going, keep going, keep going until we can make what we want happen. And that's where our good feeling comes from. It's not first place. We don't mind first place. Both three and eight want to win, but comparing and contrasting three and eight, you're going to diligently get in there. You're a perfection-oriented type, but now in the heart center rather than the gut center. And perfection comes from doing something at its very best. And it gives you the exhilarated feeling, but it doesn't last. So a lot of times threes have to have another goal and another goal and another goal, and they don't let themselves enjoy their goals. There can be a lot of sadness around that whole concept if what you set out to do and you had three things that didn't work, and then you can lose your sense of self. I've worked with a lot of threes where they were really exceptional in some area, and then the field changed or the relationship changed, and they weren't anticipating that. And threes are pretty good at having multiple roles. Would you say that's true for you? So you're
Oh yeah.
never without a role or a goal, right?
Yep. And failure is not an option.
No,
So
yes, exactly. So really, it doesn't help the threes to say, stop, pay attention to what they can do to be successful. You have to honor the threes' ambition. And twos are very ambitious, but it's the social two is the most ambitious combination. But with the three, all threes are ambitious. And the social three, you have to woo the world, not just a few people. Even the most introverted three is going to be focused on being seen as ideal in the eyes of others. In fact, they were the least likely to fill out my questionnaire in 94. And so I had to go after them. Hey, I need your perspective. Come on, I'll get you coffee and you can tell me. And then they would. And they go, well, no, I can't really tell you what I'm afraid of. I go, yeah, you can because everybody's telling me. And they said, yeah, but it's part of our, the enigma part of three that we've created this persona. And I said, okay, what if you don't meet that? And they said their fear was of second best. And I thought, second best? I'd be happy if I was second best, or be in the top 10 would be fine with me. But second best, God, there's just too many people out there that could surpass me. That would be devastating. And then they say it is. And I had a friend in high school, she's still a friend actually, that was a three, and we'd be standing in line to get our report cards. And I'd say, you probably are very bored getting your report card. And she goes, no, 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 I'm not bored. And I go, really? But you always get straight A's. Where maybe I'll get an A, maybe it'll be a B. I don't know. I'm not sure. And she goes, how can you not be sure? Well, because I got an A on a lot of things, but maybe a C here or there, and it depends on the teacher. So I said, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what I got. And she goes, well, so am I. And I go, why? But you already know there's no mystery. She said, it gives me a good feeling to see the A, the straight A's. And I said, really? Even though you already know and you got an A on everything? And she said, yes. And then later, threes would tell me when I offered all these different classes in my consulting business for different topics, overcoming insecurity, personal empowerment, diversity, whatever I was teaching. And the threes would say, well, do you have a certificate? And I go, what kind of certificate? Well, something that says I took this course from you. Oh, but I can make one. I said, but where are you going to use it? Gives me a good feeling. They would tell me they didn't know what other threes said. And so I remember one three who became a good friend when she moved to downsize. I asked her, did you take all your certificates? All your degrees and certificates? She said, Catherine, I agonized about getting rid of those because it'd be like giving away my acclaim, what I'd earned, what I worked hard to achieve. So she kept the really important ones, but she just thought, God, if only my home was a little bigger. But she had like, cabinets of achievements, things I'd never even think to keep. Or like my tennis trophies where I got first place, they were kind of broken. Or she goes, no, I should keep them in perfect condition. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but those were from childhood. I wasn't that good at keeping them. But the threes do. And then they build things to show, and they do it with their children and their family members. They're great coaches, you threes. Whereas the four now, on the other hand, they're preoccupied with exclusivity, individuality, their personal trademark. And even when they don't know the Enneagram, they know they want to be different, but not just any kind of different. It stems from the part of four where they know they can't be the best at everything. They know they can't be a three. They don't want to work that hard. They're more focused on putting energy into what they feel passion for, and then they could work day and night, or then be in the down mode to recoup, and then they're stimulated by something that will make them stand out individually. So once I was working with a four when I first created the first set of Enneagram cards years ago, and I thought, yeah, one set isn't enough. I need to compare it against another set to see, because there are different types of threes, different types of each type. And so I
Hmm.
really needed three sets. But in the first testing instrument, I did two. And the four making the cards said, no, one's fine, because he didn't want to do it again. And I said, yeah, but if you do it, it'll be the only test that includes the visual perspective. Wait, you're right. It'll be the only one. And then that motivated the four, because the four is meant to see, the fruit on the highest branch that tastes the best, looks the best. Whereas the three saying, no, if we do enough, there are going to be some good trees in there. And the four saying, no, no, we should only have good tasting fruit that look good. And the three might say, what kind of look good? I like things to look good, but having more food rather than less would be more desirable. But the forest is saying, no, we need to identify what is the most elite example, where the three is like having so much and a system that makes it work, the mental type in the heart center. Whereas the four is the more visceral type in the heart center. And so they're thinking, the way it needs to be, but it's a compensation for feeling that you can't be like Johnny, who's good at everything. But what they don't realize is Johnny isn't good at everything. Johnny might not know how to talk to people, may struggle with vocabulary or using diverse vocabulary, but be really great at math. But the four tends to notice who's really good at something they can't do. And they forget that they can do a whole slew of things that others can't. So the preoccupation is, if I can't be the best at something, I need to be accomplished, or it must be unique and others can't do it. So I have a better chance of feeling good about myself. So they compulsively focus on creating their persona in a way that allows them to do that. But here's the thing, if they keep thinking it's the shape, like if we take a vase, the four is filling it in and go, and that's who I am, because they're a heart type, they're an image type. They lead with their image. They keep changing their image. Whereas seven likes things different, unique, but they need it changing out of interest, not adding to it and becoming more and more consolidated as a persona. is being more diverse so that you're not trapped in a single persona. So they're a common lookalike. But in the case of the four, it's really helpful to suggest that they consider a more kind of practical solution, that everything can't be at the level of exclusivity, and that it's better to take some of those ordinary things we have to do anyhow and give meaning to them, some kind of meaning, so that we will want to do it. So taking ordinary situations, and rather than waiting for rescue or ideal circumstances, depending on the instinct. But if you're waiting for the ideal circumstances, you're spending a lot of time alone. And the other thing is, if you have to be different from everybody, then to be valuable, then it's hard to feel close to people because you excluded a lot of people in order to be exclusive. It's kind of an interesting dynamic that they suffer from. And so their persona is more mysterious and unique and interesting at a deep level. They're naturally deep. No one has to teach a four how to consider what they're feeling. It's just giving meaning to what they feel. And so they're hurt a lot if people don't understand their need for this very exclusive persona. But like some people, if four is in second or third position, they might have aspects, but be totally unaware of them. But if they really look at it, if four is in the tritype, you're going to find some way in which you feel exempt from ordinary situations and not know it. Like I was that way, but I just thought it was type 8. Yeah, I'm not going to bother waiting for that. But I didn't realize I was thinking, yeah, I shouldn't have to wait. I taught these classes all over the country, but I thought, oh, that's the 8 grandiosity where I'm not going to bother with that stuff. But the 4 was in there too. And so that's why we have to look at tritype to see, because every type has something in common with every other type, and then something the opposite. So we must see what's created. So in the case of the 4, they can wait alone for ideal circumstances, but they will enjoy life more if they can see the way to modify the ordinary in finding ways to make it more meaningful. And it actually does work. It sounds like it won't, but in all these cases, we have to explore it. Whereas with the 5, they want to be alone. Like the 5 prefers to isolate, to study what is of interest to them, because people get into their mind. If they're thinking their thoughts and people are loud around them or asking them questions, they can't think their thoughts. So they like a clear mind, and they'll be preoccupied with that. And their fear of intrusion and invasion and obligation will keep them from relating to people. Like, Naranjo asked me to put his thoughts on the subtypes into my book, which I did. I said, well, aren't you afraid I'll just like take credit for it? And he goes, no. And I said, well, why not? I could do that. And he goes, no, you wouldn't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, because you gave everybody credit and people who didn't even deserve it. But he didn't say it like that. That's more the way the 8 talks. He goes, no, you gave everybody credit. You'll give me credit. And I go, yeah, you're right. I will. But it's just like he wanted me to put it in my book so his views would be recognized and validated. And I said, well, don't you want to just write your own subtype book, especially now how you can see, that when I found countertypes, it was true. And then you added it to your teaching. But he didn't add it for 14 years. And he didn't come out with a book after his work being validated by my research for 16 years. So that's really the 5. They become retentive, and they must know something so thoroughly before they'll risk that. And even when Naranjo did write his books, he always wove in people in his groups, what they said about a category, especially with the Enneagram. So what's in there is always what he learned from others. And then they would share, and then that would be put in the book. But that's just important to know there. Whereas the three is going to learn it, polish it, create a good little system, get it out there. Eight, the same thing. The minute I learned it, I was teaching it to my clients. I mean, I don't think a day went by. Oh, well, there are people that are like this, and you know what? You're like this type that's a two that really needs to be appreciated. And the person might say, well, doesn't everybody? I go, yeah, but you need it like water. And other people don't. Like, I don't need to be appreciated. I just don't want to be, negated. But appreciated is like, yeah, that's good, but it's not essential. So the five has to learn to share the little bits that they know without feeling that they'll be invaded further and be wrong in some way and their views negated, that they're ignorant in some way. Their fears finding out they're ignorant. So they'd rather keep things close to the chest or be focused on their world. Now, the low side, of course, is they're isolated from others, the part where they don't want to be isolated. So it's kind of confusing with the defense strategy of isolation. One is choosing it, the other is being really rejected and cast out. And that's the dynamic with five. Whereas with six, they're hardwired to track inconsistencies. And we all need that. We need to know, wait a minute, you said that on Tuesday. You're saying this on Friday. I don't know if you're trustworthy. You're suspect. And now sometimes it's conditional. Both can be true. That's what the six has to learn, that they don't need to feel everyone's dangerous. And like sixes on the first Ennea cards that I did, I had a very smiley two face on the two card. And then sixes would choose that card. And I'd say, well, why did you choose that card? Oh, I like a friendly face. I go, do you think your face looks like that or you smile like that? No. And I thought, well, then why did you choose it? Well, as I said, I like I like it when people are friendly. And then they gave me examples, like even driving down the freeway, they kind of look into other cars to see if the people around them are friendly, because if they are, they will help them if there's an accident. They know which car to go to. I'd never in a million years think like that. I would just do what I needed to do. And then, so what they have to learn is that there are times when it's better to allow circumstances to unfold and to see that everything comes together and that situations vary. Even if things look suspect, that they can watch them unfold before they make a fixed decision. And so that's why fear is so difficult for them, so much so that they don't even know they're afraid, but they have a fear of being afraid. So that's why they prepared or they do things to not be afraid. They go, I'm not afraid. But yet they're constantly saying, well, it depends. It depends on this, it depends on that. Well, the other types don't say it depends all the time. Only sixes do. And it could be in an interview, they could say it 20, 30 times because everything depends on the situation. So they can start to appreciate that everyone isn't potentially dangerous if they don't smile, that it helps to understand why someone isn't smiling. But they're right. They're noticing all the micro expressions. There are all these little shorts out there on ADHD, and when they're sixes that have ADHD, they're talking about people being suspicious and all these characteristics of six. I have ADHD, but I don't have those. I don't have suspicion. I just think, yeah, you're not trustworthy. And I don't worry about it. I don't think about it again. But the anxiety, I never had anxiety with ADHD. I just pursued what interested me. So I would give anything if we all understood the differences with the Enneagram types. So much research out there has been done with volunteer, and the type to volunteer more than any others is social 6. And they do volunteer if they see the little sign. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll learn something. Remember, the head types need to know or learn to be safe. Whereas they can voice their concerns after they've done more analysis rather than their snap decision fear, because they'd rather consider how terrible it is. And then if they make a mistake, they're still safe. If they're optimistic, then that means they're not prepared for what can go wrong. Whereas the 7, is hardwired to think, oh, what's possible? And both 3 and 7 look at what's possible and opportunities and possibilities. But with the 7, it's future oriented. It's not right now. Whereas the 3 is going to, yeah, I've got to do it now. I've got to create a system. Where the 7 says, yeah, that would be good. Let's see, we could do it like this. We could do it like that. Nah, never mind. And a lot of our favorite commercials are 7s making fun of the other types, like, oh yeah, and then we could have mood, music and candles. And no, we'd have an accident. They do it in the extreme, but 7s envisioning everything. And if they can't envision it, they feel limited. It feels suffocating. They describe when they're in trauma that it's like they can't breathe like we might imagine, but it's not like the full-blown panic attack for most of them, but they feel like there's a hole in their heart, like they can't feel their heart when they're heartbroken, but their panic comes up and then they're trying to divert. So it's being able to slow down and recognize that even if it feels cold in their heart, that any little thing, any little joy, which is what they want to do, will help offset that. But they have to do so consciously. Otherwise, they're just going to be running, and feeling like they have iron shackles slowing them down. So they won't want to explore their pain or their suffering. And so they usually don't come. In fact, when I work with 7s, I tell them that we need to tag what is painful, but we don't need to stay in it. And I promise them that we'll tag it and I'll take them right out of it. And they go, you promise? And I go, I promise. And I do. Boy, I go, okay, we'll just forget about that now. And we're going to think about what you really enjoyed when you went windsurfing. And it works for them. So they've got to do that, but they still have to touch in to understand what they're avoiding. Whereas the 8, on the other hand, is preoccupied with what's weak, what's at risk, what could be a problem here. And our own weakness in particular, like 8s never use the word vulnerable till they learn the Enneagram, because we don't even know what vulnerable means, because we don't let ourselves have it. But we know we don't want to be weak and pathetic, because if we're weak and pathetic, we can be overpowered and controlled, manipulated, and at the mercy of injustice. So we're preoccupied with sensing who or what is strong and who or what is weak. And we do it just like this. 6s do it that way, looking at inconsistencies, but 8s do it just sensing it. And we know who's in power. It might not be the person with the title. It might be the assistant that's running things. So we know that. And we go to the power source, where the 6 tries to befriend people. And they find a way to be protected. Where the 8, on the other hand, wants to know who's the no-nonsense person, or who's running things. Who do I need to interact with? And remember, with your tritype, the 3 types, if you put these together, is how you're going to deal with trauma. But the 8s are saying, no, I don't have trauma. I'm a solution master. I figure things out. But we don't, because going into denial is not figuring things out. It's like the 9 burying it. It's still there. Or the 1, like, what do I need to do to improve it? They've lost the perspective because they're compulsively trying to improve and missing their tender heart. So all gut types do that. And then, so it's better with the 8 is to acknowledge, or if they don't know, ask them how they treat people that are not using weakness to get their way, but might be weak because they're young or they're elderly, or a lot of times with teens and young adults, I say, is there anyone, do you have a younger brother, sister, cousin, neighbor, someone that, needs kind of to be helped out at times because they don't have a fair shake in life, at least not yet. And they go, oh, yeah, I always help people that are truly weak, but I have no use for people that are pretending to be weak to get their way. I mean, just universally, eights will do that, or they'll help the little old lady. I remember my son, Spencer, if you've seen him in any of our videos, we co-teach on the Enneagram Tritype and the subtypes in relationship. And he's a therapist and he grew up with the Enneagram. So he was 40 this year. So that's how long I've known the Enneagram. And I was pregnant with him when I learned. So, long story short, is we have to be willing to show our grief rather than say, no, I'm fine. Yeah, don't swarm me. We're kind of like fives that way. It's like we don't believe the in love. We want love, but we don't believe in it. We kind of think it's human nature that people will sell us out if they need to protect themselves. So there's part of us that's matter of fact, but the truth of the matter is that vulnerable part that we disown really wants people to hold fast and be consistent. So once with the eight that we're suggesting that it's better to also allow circumstances to unfold like the six before we take over. So the six needs to allow that to happen before they feel like the sky is falling and it's not going to work out. Well, we need to realize that the nine is kind of wise because they see what's going to work itself out before they interject. So last but not least is the nine is hardwired to keep it simple, keep it pleasant, comfortable, everybody at ease, everybody getting along. And if things get complicated, yeah, they don't like things too complicated. There's too many variables that can go wrong. What happens when things go wrong? There's conflict. And if there's conflict, someone's kind of separate from others. So the nines are hardwired to keep neutrality. So, and all the centers of each center are using both their wings. That was lost in the transmission of the Enneagram, by the way, is we don't have one wing. To be our type, it's the tension between the two wings. And then that's how we're trying to be both wings at the same time. And so in the case of the nine, it's a ninefold system. So they're actually seeing all 9 points of view. So they're meant to identify with 4 or even 5 types, but they're looking at behaviors and all new people to the Enneagram. They're trying to determine their type by what behaviors they do or don't do. And that's why we have to go back to idealized images, core fears, and defense strategies. And I've got them all written down on katherinefauvre.com/tritype. So I've got that there for people who want it. People tell me there's too much there, but I tried to break it up, and I have blogs and you can search in the blog for the topic you want. But in the case of the nine, the identification is if they're humble, if they're understated, they won't invoke jealousy, they won't have to deal with conflict, but they must hold neutrality. And if they don't, they feel distressed. They feel like frantic. And nines need to be calm. I remember in my first cards, I had calm on the card. And some nines said, well, no, I want to be calm. I'm not calm all the time, especially the sexual nines, because they could be distressed about any type of separation. And it's a fear of separation. So, what's helpful is to help the nine understand that burying is not calming, it's temporarily calming, but that things sprout and take root, and they're going to have the emotional hijacking if they're just thinking it's gone away. And then they can end up doing things that are more unconscious. And that's true of all the gut types. But that sometimes it's better to consciously do things that help relax. And like a lot of times parents will say to me, yeah, should my kids be playing video games? I go, well, do they have ADHD? Do they have a problem with dopamine? Can they easily self-soothe? I mean, all these things make a difference. And if you happen to be a type that's running that energy, like sixes with the ADHD that have the anxiety, it's good for them to unwind with a video game. And that calms them because it matches the stimulation. And I could do a whole thing for the types too, whatever the struggle is, the way there's so much diversity and the atypical versus the typical brain, the neurotypical. But in the case of the nine, they're trying to see everyone's point of view and then they're trying to appease the person in front of them. And where they struggle is that people say, wait a minute, Stephanie agreed with me. Stephanie being the nine, and I'm talking to John, and John is saying, no, 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 she agreed with me. And I've worked with a lot of managers that are so pleasant that they make it to that mid-level management. And then their direct reports are in conflict and they're saying, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, to each one of them. And their reports walk away thinking that the nine agrees with them, but the nine has their own opinion, which might be a third opinion. And so understanding that it's better to see each problem individually and possible ways of dealing with it, but to be clear that they do have an opinion. They just don't want to voice it because they don't want to be estranged from anyone. But if they forget that it's okay to have an opinion and they can choose who they share it with or not, but unconsciously misleading people that they agree is where they just suffer terribly because then people are mad at them and they don't understand why. So their depression will be just not making an effort. So they have to self-soothe. They have to distract with something pleasant to begin the healing journey. And people think, no, you got to get up and do something. No. Now, when they're happy and they want to watch TV or zone out, that's different. But when they're depressed, they must be allowed to kind of return to the womb before they try fixing it. With all these, as I said, it depends on the degree of the problem, whether it's chronic. But if you just take the passion, fixation, and conviction and just have it on fire, is what happens with trauma and loss. And loss and heartache and trauma really are all the same thing. It's just to what degree we feel it.